I think this was the moment where I began to deeply enjoy The Mandalorian and feel my love for Star Wars resurface. But to understand why, we need to look back at the moment I completely lost faith. The cave scene is one of my favorite scenes in Empire. It's genuinely scary. It highlights Luke's flaws and sets up the reveal at the end as well as the climax in Return of the Jedi. Up to this point, The Last Jedi had, like The Force Awakens before it, been more or less copying all of the broad beats of its sister movie in the original trilogy, but just slightly worse. But then, suddenly, I was feeling genuinely tense. Suddenly, this scene was starting to seem like it might stack up to the original. There was actual filmmaking going on. First, she looks scared, but then calm and determined. A shot of her hand. It lifts, it snaps. She realizes it doesn't go on forever. Then after showing us all that like an actual movie, Rey tells us everything they just showed us on a voiceover.
I should have felt trapped or panicked, but I didn't. This didn't go on forever. I knew it was leading somewhere.
For comparison, imagine how horrible this scene would be if Mando felt the need to explain how he was feeling to you. Or imagine how much better this scene would be if they just took out the voiceover. It blows my mind that no one looked at this scene and asked if maybe they should just take it out. Or maybe worse, that someone looked at the scene and thought they needed to put it in. Because this isn't the only time The Last Jedi chose to explain things to us instead of showing them. Far from it.
Master Yoda. Young Skywalker. I'm ending all of this. The tree, the text, the Jedi. I'm gonna burn it down.
Finn, the fleet is running on fumes. Without a codebreaker to bring us onto Snoke's Star Destroyer. What do we do?
I don't know. Unless you got a thief in your pocket, our plan is shot.
The original Star Wars didn't feel the need to recap the plot every scene change, they just trusted you to keep up, and you can still have a good time watching these movies even if you don't understand every detail. Let's look at my favorite scene in The Return of the Jedi. In fact, this might be my favorite scene in the entire trilogy. With just framing and acting, they managed to convey so much in this scene. Vader realizes his vulnerability. Luke gives in to the dark side for a moment. The Emperor, seeing this, begins to feel triumph.
Your hate has made you powerful. Now, fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side.
But then, Luke looks at his mechanical hand. He looks at Vader's mechanical hand. He starts to understand that he's becoming his father. And then we get the moment that the entire trilogy has built towards.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is the scene that makes Return of the Jedi a great movie. Without it, well, a lot of the issues that become trademark Star Wars problems are here. You've got the repetitiveness, you've got the ham-fisted merchandising, you've got the shameless fan service, but it's all saved by the power of this one scene. The movie doesn't tell you how to feel. It doesn't tell you what Luke or Vader are feeling, but you know, and you don't even need to recognize all that fancy symbolism. And then you can see it without being told makes it far more powerful. That's why you show, and don't tell.
I like your ship. She's classic. Razor Crest, am I right? Pre-Empire?
For the first 3 episodes, the Mandalorian never tells. In fact, he almost never speaks. The character has an aesthetic of efficiency and secrecy. The show matches this aesthetic. It tells the viewer almost nothing. It doesn't tell us where exactly or when exactly we are, it rarely tells us names of any sort, and the plot is mostly inferred rather than told. Naturally, this raises questions in the viewer. Who is this guy? What's his name? Where did he come from? Who are the Mandalorians? Are they these guys? These guys? What planet are we on? What planet are we on now? It looks kind of like Tatooine, is it? Wait, there are Jawas. This is Tatooine. Wait, are Jawas only on Tatooine? The show is smart enough to hint at the answers to these questions without outright telling us. Then a wonderful thing happens. The mystery engages us. We start to wonder. We start to think. We start to analyze. We can begin to try and put some of the clues together. This, too, is the power of showing. If you refuse to explain things to us, but instead entice us with mystery, we'll engage with your story. We'll be looking for every clue. But it also rings true. People don't explain their emotions to each other like robots. They especially don't explain them to some viewer. When you over-explain, it starts to feel nakedly movie-like. It ejects us out of the secondary world, to quote Tolkien. Suddenly, we aren't engrossed in a story, but instead watching a movie. The spell is broken. Which brings us back to this scene. A teacher once told me that creativity isn't stoked by boundless freedom, but instead by tight constraints. Because the Mandalorian never takes his helmet off, the actor cannot emote with his face. Because the show is so conservative with its dialogue, he often cannot emote with his voice. This leaves us only 3 primary ways to show emotion: the camera, the blocking, and the audio. And here, with just those tools, the scene manages to burst with feeling. It was like the showrunners had walked out of The Last Jedi with all the same complaints I did and were determined to make Star Wars awesome again, to touch that cold, shriveled place where my heart should be and stoke genuine emotion, and not kill it with an explanation.
The sacred Jedi texts!
Oh, read them, have you?
Or a joke.
Page turners, they were not.
To be clear, the current main trilogy has many more problems than I have addressed here, many of which have been discussed to death already. However, trust in the storyteller is a critically important part of buying into a story, and trust is a two-way street. When the storyteller doesn't trust you to keep up, but instead explains everything to death like you are an idiot, you naturally start looking for the holes in their story instead of being engrossed in the drama. In all the debates about whether The Last Jedi, quote, made sense, what gets lost is why we started noticing the issues, started feeling the metaphorical car of the story hit the plot holes. Look, no one complains about how the T-Rex reveal makes no sense in Jurassic Park even though there are massive logical gaps, because we are engrossed in the drama and story. We aren't looking for the gaps. Now, this is not the only way someone could have gotten drop-kicked out of the story. Maybe they noticed that the main villain was now a whiny Vader wannabe who already got beat by the protagonist once and were wondering where the drama was supposed to be. Maybe they got turned off by the inappropriately timed jokes.
I know what you're gonna say. I changed my hair.
Or zigzagging expectations that are generally used in more comedic movies. Maybe they got turned off by something else entirely. Or not. After all, plenty of people made it through with their engagement intact. But I suspect that treating your audience like children and over-explaining the plot to them at every turn is probably not a good way to maintain immersion in drama. As for The Mandalorian, well, unfortunately, while the first 3 episodes of The Mandalorian follow this model that I've been describing, with the very beginning of the 4th episode, it begins to go off the rails.
Let's see, Sorgan. Looks like there's no starport, no industrial centers, no population density. Real backwater scuggle, which means it's perfect for us. You ready to lay low and stretch your legs for a couple of months, you little womp rat?
Mando is just talking too much, explaining too much, asking too many questions. We're telling again instead of showing. Or possibly worse, showing and then telling anyway. In the 5th episode, the ugly specter of fan service begins to rear its head.
That's my line.
This is Mos Eisley Tower. We're tracking you.
I don't know. Drag it to Beggar's Canyon.
Maybe it will get better. Maybe it will continue to get worse. But I'll reserve judgment until the season is complete. This isn't to say that the first 3 episodes were perfect. There was still some stilted dialogue, cheesy moments, and unnecessary inclusions. Like, imagine how much better these scenes would have been if the flashbacks were audio only. At the end of the day, I don't believe that this simple space western can or will save the Star Wars franchise. I just want you to see how much better Star Wars, or any story, can be when you show and don't tell.